they know, and that's what their staff know. So we had to really reach out to try to strengthen that program. Now the other thing that was a reality is we still had kids that had to be in locked settings. And it was a very difficult time because we had the locked settings, but we wanted small intensive treatment programs, is what we were calling them. And so rather than having, you know, like 100 kids or 200 kids or 500 kids, like some of the other big places, we were talking about, let's set up some programs where we've got 20 kids. Maybe we could have a few of them around the state. And then it became very difficult because you had to try to explain to your staff and to everybody else in the state that, yes, it used to be easy to get rid of the kids. Even private agencies used to be able to say, well, wait a minute, the kid's acting up in our place, we'll send them to the department. You've got to change a whole mindset around that and say, this is not good for kids to be going into this place. There are kids that absolutely do need the controls. And if anything, where it had been so controlled, there were actually times when I would try to set up an intensive program, and the liberal groups would come after me because they'd say, what, are you going back to the old days of terrible institutions? So you kind of got caught, when you go into the judges, they're saying, you've got to make this stuff stronger, you know, more controlled. And when you hit the other crew, they'd be saying, nope, you're going back to the bad old days of things going. But it did force other groups. It did force, that's when the 766 law passed, so that you could say all those kids who used to go for truancy, if a kid was truant, they used to go to the department. Now, it was always interesting to me, the department never had certified education. None of the training schools had certified education. So you were taking a kid out of, say, Arlington, who was truant, and you were saying, well, you're not going to school. We're going to send you to a place that really doesn't have education. And you're going to stay there till you're 17 years old, 16 years old, and they could quit. So the whole system had to switch around and change. So I would say for me, the major part of it was to establish the community-based programs and to support the programs, because as I say, the money was in the institutions, but the kids were out there. So it took a lot of doing to, again, keep a key alive, keep a lot of these other programs alive. Wayside was another one that was out there. So that was difficult. And then the other part that was difficult is there was tremendous upset from both the police and from the courts and from a variety of others, you know, press and everybody else, that really was saying, well, even though we can say this system's been going for 100 years this way, this is about the 3rd year we've been doing this out there, so you should have been able to do it by this time. So that was a little difficult.
Thank you for that. So a half a century in juvenile justice.
Yeah.
What would you say has been or have been the most significant changes that you've seen in the field and then in the Department of Youth Services here in Massachusetts? So first the field, and then bring it a little closer to home to your agency, to our agency.
We used to have a program in the state called Oakdale, and there you would send kids 7 years of age, and they would stay there till 12 and move on. And everybody got the idea at that point, well, these are the kids, these are the bad kids. And so the best way to deal with bad kids is keep them in the institution. And even though as I went in at one point and said to the superintendent, we got a problem here. Recidivism is 98%. You know, you're not doing a good job. And if you wanted to go through it, take the other programs, even Lyman School and Shirley, I used to go to all of the adult institutions. And when I'd go into those jails, it was always, hey, Mr. Leavey, how are you? Good to see you. And I'd say, oh, good to see you too, but unfortunately you're here. And the recidivism was sky high. And the kids were, and those kids even at Oakdale, there was a young kid, and he'd be there. If you were in Oakdale, you had red shirts, and you had short pants, short blue pants. And if you were 7 and 8, that's what you'd have to wear. When you were 9, you could start wearing long pants. And so there were like 80 kids in that program. And I spoke to one kid, and he was telling me, well, he says, yeah, I'm here at Oakdale, but he says, you know, when I'm 12, I can go to Lyman. And when I'm 15, I can go to Shirley. And so you've got them in the whole pot, just saying, well, then I can go with my father. Where's your father? Well, he's in jail. He's up in Concord. So that whole mentality, I think one of the biggest things that Jerry did, and then I was really very good at this and pushing this, is you got to humanize the kids. Everybody would say, how could you treat kids like this? Well, they didn't think they were treats. They didn't think they were kids. If you said to anybody, I'm going to tell you a word, 2 words, juvenile delinquent, tell me exactly what you're thinking. And the people would all say the same thing. Well, they're 6 feet tall, they're all, you know, raping and pillaging the community, they're this, they're that. And so we did all these things back in those days where we took the kids to the circus. And one night we took 90 kids out of the secure unit over in Rosendale. We took them to the circus. 85 kids came back, which I thought was about as good as you're going to do at Newton High School, you know, if you could keep those kids. So the press didn't see it that way. They got all excited about it. But I think a lot of people just didn't believe DYS kids actually liked the circus. And we did, and I feel so terrific about the department where it's at now. I go to the arts fair all the time. We did that, you know, back then, but it was considered, these kids, what are you talking about? They don't like to paint, they don't like to this, they don't like to that. We had it going on a small scale. You now get that established. And more people, when they're looking at even the kids from DYS, they're realizing, well, no, these aren't kids that are all just going to go into Walpole for the rest of their lives. These are kids who, some of them, unfortunately, and that's why everybody's got to keep working at it, yeah, some of them have, for a variety of reasons, they're going to get into some serious trouble. I think one of the unfair things that happens is when people look, let's say at DYS now, and DYS can keep saying, well, look at the kid, he's in school, he's going to this, he's going to that. I haven't seen that in the papers too often. But if one of the kids, you know, leaves a group home and all of a sudden gets into some kind of criminal offense, there are those who are just turning around and saying, well, that's it, you got to lock them all up. This wouldn't have happened if you would lock them up. Well, it wouldn't have happened then, and it might not have happened for another few months. But if you kept those kids locked up like that, like we used to do, then you've taken away the possibilities that you've got of really turning things around. So I think the thing that we were able to establish is that, no, it wasn't just the poor little orphan kids from the Department of Child and Family Services that could benefit from foster homes, from group homes, from a lot of in-home services. Now, when you can look at it, you say, well, at DYS, you can do those same kinds of things, and you're going to have some very beneficial things. The other thing that DYS has been able to do, and we couldn't back then, and it took a while to do it, is to get the proper balance between, you're going to have the more community protection, and you got to be able to take care of the kids. And in those days, as I say, there were, at one point you were locking up many too many kids, and not really for the right reasons, and not really treating them, and not really doing that. You get away from that, and then it really takes a change in attitude and training and everything else, not just for the DYS staff and for the DYS leadership, but also for all the police and all the courts, so that everybody is working together. And I think really another reason why the department is so successful is they've made that balance certainly much better than back in the days when we were there. But it took a long time to get there. And I think that you need both. You need to be able to demonstrate to the public, if we got to hold a kid, we hold them. And if they're in our secure units, they're not getting out. We're going to work as hard as we can to get them out properly, as fast as we can, because we know that ain't good for them there. But, you know, sometimes we make a mistake, sometimes we don't. But they definitely very solid in that. Plus, the department's always pushing for, okay, well, how can we move that on? I mean, I run Communities for People, and we have an independent living program. And by DYS standards, you'd say, well, it's not much security there. No, we don't need the security. But the kids all have jobs, the kids are going to school. We have to make sure the kids are back for curfew and all those kinds of things. And so if you have a solid program, you can take more risks. And I think that is part of working with kids, working with teenagers. You are going to have to have the risks for them. When you used to take kids and just put them in a locked setting for a few years, well, you didn't have to worry too much about them all running away, but what have you done for that kid for 3 or 4 years? You've gotten him ready for Walpole.
So that being said, that's a really good segue into my next question, which is, let's say somebody who wants to get into juvenile justice work comes to you and says, you know, you've spent 50 years in this field.
Yeah.
How would you advise